don't want that. or I burst into tears. So either way, I'm gonna read this, but I'll be, conversational as well. But I really want to appreciate all of you for coming, because a lot of you have known Mike from the very beginning of Chiller. I mean, this was probably one of his favorite things to do, was come to this show. And Kevin was one of his very best friends. I mean, Mike had just a handful of people he liked to speak to all the time and stayed in touch with and adored, and I'd say Kevin's in the top 3. Yep, definitely. And
top 5.
well, no, I was thinking, no, you're top 3. And he loved Kevin, and he loved Chiller and everybody associated with it. And his favorite thing to do would be, after the convention, Monday mornings, staff all gets together for breakfast, and that was the time he liked best, because he got to talk one-on-one with everybody, and all the hoopla was over, and just reminisce about whatever happened over the weekend and stuff. And sometimes he didn't. One time he didn't make it home after that Monday because he went out with some friends that night and he lost a day. So that's another good Chiller story, but I won't tell you about it. I don't know how many of you know the specifics about what happened with Mike, but he was diagnosed with lung cancer in August of 2012. And he was very private about it. Most people didn't hear about him being sick until he actually passed, unless you were in our very close circle of people. He was only 56 years old. And well, I'll just say it, and I won't go into too many details, but he was as brave and tenacious dealing with his disease as he was with collecting movies or any of the other things that he did. I mean, it was he took everything on with a full passion, and he was determined, this isn't going to take me out or whatever. And he lasted a hell of a lot longer than they ever expected. So I admire him for everything that he went through. It was just typical. Anyways, I'm not crying. Okay, so like I said, this is a totally appropriate place to be doing a tribute for Mike. Besides liking Chiller, he actually used to do conventions before he and Kevin got together. He used to do comic book ones in the Seattle area. And he just liked being around other collectors and people who were into pop culture or film or comic books or whatever it may be. And the reason that Chiller's so special to me is that I actually met Mike at the April 1993 Chiller. He was set up, and I had come, and I was doing an article about sexploitation films for a magazine that it does no longer exist. It's fancy. But I had, contacted him ahead of time at the office and was like, can I interview you and Dave Friedman while you're here? And I walked up to their table, and he just got pie-eyed. And he's like, you like these movies? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, I've been renting them at King's Video. I lived in New York City at the time. And, I pretty much watched everything that they have, and I love Doris Wishman, and Finleys are my favorite. He goes, you like the Finleys? And he's like, I never heard of a woman liking that, Ruffies. And I'm like, well, they're just really interesting films. So we just started a friendship. And he would tell people that he fell in love with me the second he met me. It took me a little bit longer. It was very, very complicated, but it ended up that after a couple of conventions and a lot of drama, we became inseparable, and we spent the next 20 years together. So, and I could tell you so many funny Chiller stories, but I won't go there. And what I want to say about Mike is that he was always a movie fanatic, even from the time he was a kid. He used to have the neighborhood kids in Bellevue, Washington, come into his garage and he'd charge admission and show them Castle Super 8 movies. So The Creature or whatever goofy ones he had then. So he was always a promoter and always into film. He also worked at the drive-in during his teenage years in the Washington area. And there was a period of time where he was doing music stuff, and I don't know how many of you know this, but he used to be the manager of Dead Kennedys and TSOL and another band called The Accused from Seattle. So he had this whole other life as well as the movie thing. But he got back into film when he was down in Los Angeles managing TSOL, and he broke his foot. And the funniest thing is he he broke it skateboarding. He never went skateboarding in his entire life. The first time he steps on one, he breaks his foot. So anyway, he was laid up for a while, and a friend of his, Larry Hardy, who's in the band The Vandals and has a record label down in LA, he's like, well, while you're laid up, here's a VCR and some videotapes. And Mike's like, what is this magical thing that you brought me? And it ended up that that was his introduction to the VHS format. And the thing that he said was, you can make money with this machine. You can make copies of anything. And from that point on, he started bootlegging stuff and selling it in fanzines and at conventions, and hooked up with Kevin and whatnot. But he was basically a world-class bootlegger at that time. But around 1988, he had his first kid, Mark, and he realized that he probably should get a little bit more serious because he now had a family to support. So he started Something Weird Video, and at first, I guess it was more kind of pirated stuff, or just things that weren't on the legit. But he named the company after the Herschel Gordon Lewis film, and that we still sell to this day. And he got the idea to start looking for film elements, like actual, like whether they be feature films or shorts or whatnot. So the first kind of big cache of films that he got was in a depot in Everett, Washington. It was just a full of 16 millimeter girly loops from like the 1940s through the late 60s. And he's like, I don't think these have ever been on home video. And he decided, I'm gonna transfer all of these and I'm gonna see what happens. And they sold like hotcakes. I mean, the Nudie Cuties, Shorts, Loops, and Peeps series began around 1990, 91. And he went on to make 370 two-hour volumes of those things. So there's like 740 hours of naked ladies that he's looked at and put together, and and it's also one of our most popular series. But he also started to find 35 millimeter sexploitation prints, and that was something that he was really excited about. And because he didn't really know about transferring film, the first releases were actually shot on video from the Apple porno theater that he worked at the time. So he'd sit in the audience and film like The Sin Syndicate, and then sell it on video. But eventually it was transferred, and it's beautiful now. But he really did start to focus on finding as many films as he could, and sometimes he didn't get them through the most traditional means. He was actually selling some of David Friedman's movies on VHS at the time, and he got a call from Dave Friedman. He's like, and according to Jim Boris, our friend here, it was selling Daughter of the Sun, which is a nudist movie that nobody should watch because it's terrible, but it's it's still historical. And Dave said, hey, kid, you're selling my movies. And Mike replied, yeah, and people love them. So he talked Dave into letting him have a print of Space Thing. And he said, let me just transfer this and we'll put it out and see what happens. And people went nuts. They were like, oh, these films had never been available before. And Dave Friedman, like, he's a legend in this industry. And so Dave gets his first royalty check and he's like, sold. He goes, you can have everything of mine, and I'll introduce you to all my friends. So that's how Mike met Harry Novak and Bob Cressy and Stephen Morowitz's dad, Arthur Morowitz, and it was that was the real birth of Something Weird Video. And Dan, I should say Dan Sunny too, who was Dave Friedman's partner, who went all the way back to the 30s. So anyway, and the rest is history. Something Weird, we were known for our offbeat, low budget film library, and you're certainly not going to find Citizen Kane amongst our archive. The catalog he amassed is a testament to his eclectic and quirky taste in movies, and I'd like to call it a treasure trove of celluloid goodness. Mike and I had always said that if we had been born 50 years earlier, like, we would have been roadshow people. Like, we'd either be putting on a spook show somewhere or showing, a sex hygiene film with the birth of a baby reel, and I'd have to dress in a nurse costume and hand out faint pills and sex hygiene booklets. But Chiller's the next best thing to that. So anyway, and I just want to thank you for coming and taking this time to remember him. And, it's definitely a dimmer world without him in it. And his legacy will live on. And, I hope that all of you guys continue to support us. And thank you.